So last time we had covered, I believe it was the last main thing we covered was the chariot. So I'm going to, I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. So this is the chariot metaphor that we had covered last time. And it describes the charioteer is the intellect, and the person who is riding the chariot is the jeev, the individual soul. Okay, the rest of this you can go over yourself. So the next portion that we start to cover is the cosmology of what it's covered a lot. I had sent you this Tattva Bodh, and it's covered there as well. And it's not just the cosmology, but it's the levels that we all exist in. So you see, the thing is that there's a lot of portion here in the Kathopanishad that describes the different aspects or the different dimensions that we have to ourselves. Okay. So in one of the verses, there was this passage or this verse which said, in the cave of your heart, you have both the jiva, which is the individual, as well as the self, the atma. They both reside within us, right? So we are the manifestation of both of these. And it goes further and further into defining what is the journey back to the self. But to journey back to the self, you have to understand that you are mostly functioning from a gross level, okay? From the body, from the mind which being the subtle. So you have to recognize with awareness what are the different levels of existence that I am on, because unless you go from the gross to the subtle to the subtler, you can never reach the self. And it is not as though you leave the gross to reach the subtle, to reach the causal, to reach the self. It's an expansion. So often I describe our existence as though it's concentric circles. So the circle, which is the innermost circle, is the smallest, the most dense, the least pervasive, and that is the body. And also in the world, which is the manifest universe. So these are the least pervasive, these are the smallest aspect of our existence. And then the next concentric circle would be your mind, which would also be not just more pervasive, more larger, but within which also is the physical aspect. So you're not leaving the physical aspect, you're simply expanding more and more. The next after the mind is the intellect. And you have your individual intellect, and also on the total level, the cosmic level or the collective level, you also have the collective intellect. You have the mind, you have the intellect on the individual level, but also on the total cosmic level, the macrocosmic level. And then higher than that is the causal aspect of your being. Okay, the causal being, sometimes it's referred to as subconscious, but in Vedic terms it's called the Karan, your causal, your Karan Sharir. And beyond the Karan Sharir is the it's not actually an entity in itself. It's called the jiva or the agyan, your own ignorance that you are separate from the whole. So that is not really like, it's not like a mind or subconscious. It's simply ignorance. It's a concept, or it's a it's like a veil, it's not something which is solid like that. So that is the next level. Now, for you in meditation, if you can cross that veil of separation, only then can you experience the oneness, the non duality, the totality, the self, which is synonymous with Brahman. Okay? There is no difference. So, this whole journey that is described here, it is talking about it in the microcosmic level, on the individual level, like I described, but also on the macrocosmic level. It is describing how, you have the physical universe, then you have the subtle universe or the subtle creation, the macrocosm, the collective, which is called Hiranyagarbha or the Mahat, depending on the school of philosophy. So in the Vedanta, it will be called Hiranyagarbha, and on the Samkhya Yoga, it is called the Mahat. It doesn't matter. It's basically the collective or the macrocosmic subtle level of creation. Then when it talks about Prakriti, it's talking about the causal level, the unmanifest. Causal meaning it's not manifest, it's not even subtle. It's sort of the unmanifest elements, the seed, but it's not in form yet. It is the cause of the form. So the collective is referred to as the Prakriti, and then beyond that, the equivalence of what is Ishvara here is referred to as Purushaha. So you can think of Purushaha as sort of Jeev, and that's why I sent you the chart, because it's much easier to look at the chart than it is to read these words and try to understand what is it referring to. And then beyond that, Purushaha is the highest goal, which is Brahman, which is beyond all things manifest as well as unmanifest. So this is what it's talking about, the journey. So like here, which are the verses I'm showing you, these go into this depth of what I just described. So let me just see. So this is what I was saying, no? The subtlety, the vastness and immanence. So basically when I was talking to you about the concentric circles becoming vaster and bigger and subtler. So this is what he was talking about. And this is what I was referring to, the indriyas, the sense objects, the mind, the intellect, the mahat or the total intellect, the prakriti and the purushaha. And beyond that is the Brahman. And so that's what it's going into. So I don't want to go too much into the theory because I want you to understand what is your journey. And here is what it describes, This Atman is on all living beings. It is hidden there and it's not visible to the eye. It can indeed be seen by the sharp intellect with the subtle vision of the seers of the subtle. So this is the level of evolution that we are trying to get to see that self that we are, not just in our, because once we see it in ourselves, we will see it in others also, because then you've attained oneness, non-duality. But how do you know that you have experienced that Atma? How would you know that you have touched that? So the way that you can experience it is the not experience, it's beyond experience, but the state of being. It won't be called an experience, okay? It will be the wrong word to use because experience is still very limited and it's from a very limited lower level of existence. But when you achieve a state of being, a state of existence, in where there is a complete totality, great, not just a great expansion, but you feel there is only this oneness, and you will know when you have attained that state, when you don't feel any difference with anybody or anything at all. even though the center is within yourself, even though you still function from a center, but everything feels as though it is a part of you. Just like when you see your finger, you're looking from your mind and your finger is somebody somewhere else, but you know that this finger is a part of you. You can feel that finger. Just like that, this whole creation, everything becomes a part of your larger body. You feel that it is part of your larger body. In a subtle way, you can feel it. But you don't have to go outward also. Here what it is saying is that the Atman is very close to you. It has been placed within you to experience within yourself. You don't have to go out into the universe or think that it's something very far away. But it can only be seen from the sharp intellect. When you have this one pointedness, when you have attained the level of evolution, sort of to say, to your third eye, from the third eye, when you can see with that sharp intellect, the single pointedness of or the purification of your intellect. And secondly, when you have again the attained the subtle vision. Now, subtle vision is sort of like, when you're dreaming, you still have a vision. So it's not a physical vision, but it is a subtle vision. Often when you are meditating, you might see some visions, you might observe some colors, or you might see certain things. And with that vision, you actually go into a realm of your existence where you can experience that subtle layer of yourself. So then you become the seer of the subtle. That is the experience, that is the journey that this is describing. So it talks about, how you need to have you have to have purification, a certain level of purification to go into the subtle realms. If the gross and if your body, if your mind is so impure, there's no way you can actually attain that. And then it talks about the merging, how do you go to that subtler and subtler level? So when you surrender your mind, your body into the mind into the intellect into the total mind, and the Mahat into itself, here it's describing how it's sort of like a folding backward to the center. So you go back, you keep surrendering to the higher and higher levels till you come to that self. So that's what it's describing here. The folding back inward and outward. So it's both inwards also, but it's also an expansion as well. Because when you go really deep within, it's as though you go through sort of like a black hole. You're completely expanded. So that's why it says you fold your intellect into the total mind. So your mind will merge with the total mind, and that total mind will also merge back into the self. It's just a dissolution, it's sort of, you are transcending all these levels one by one. You're transcending all these levels, and then it's in a very famous verse we come to this point. It says, arise, awake, having reached the great ones, learn from them. Having reached the great ones, meaning the great gurus, the enlightened masters, that you can learn from. And like the sharp edge of a razor, very difficult to cross and hard to tread is this path, so say the wise ones. So this razor's edge was another book, which I don't remember who's the author, but it's a famous saying, walking on the razor's edge. Because why? Because on both sides it's duality. So walking in balance, where you neither love nor hate, you never have these attachments or aversions. It's very difficult uh, to walk this middle path in life, because what we end up doing is we tend to fall to duality in some way in everything in our life. We either have opinions for or against. We either have feelings for or against. We either have, good health or bad health, physically, mentally, intellectually, logically, whatever, feeling wise also, or emotions also. We always tend to fall in a duality. But to walk on the razor's edge is the most difficult. You see? Why? Because it is a witness state. When you have a witness state, you don't have a judgment, you don't have an opinion, you don't really have some emotion. You see, like I was thinking about this today, it's like nature. When nature, if you sit in nature, if you sit under a tree, you go for a walk, you just observe the sun or the river or the mountains or the wind, it is so much in a witness state. Nature doesn't have an emotion or an opinion or a feeling or a pro or con or anything like that. Nature is simply existing as a witness. And no matter who walks in nature, whether it's a criminal or if it's a saint, it has the same, it is the same. It doesn't change. So if we are resonating, if we are, one with nature, we don't have these emotions, or we don't have the mind games and the feelings and emotions and all this drama. If we can exist like nature, we won't have any dualities. And when we exist like nature, we won't have any judgments about anybody. Nature doesn't judge people. And nature is also very giving. There's so much abundance and there's so much giving. Nature, sun is giving, rain is giving, flowers are giving, fruits are giving. It is all about this one big ecosystem. And when you become one with that big ecosystem of nature, you will realize that you have transcended duality. And that is why it is very important to understand how to walk the razor's edge in life, because you don't want to fall in on either side. So that is a very important thing. It is very hard to tread this path. But the ones who have reached the goal, because we have to transcend duality. Um, so the next verse, it's talking about the eternal, which is beyond all the perceptions. It is soundless, touchless, colorless. This is beyond all the elements. It is beyond, because it's beyond all the elements, it's also beyond all the senses, because all the senses are attached to some element. So it's just saying that, it's beyond all of those senses, all of those elements. It is without beginning and without end. And it's distinct from everything, from the gross to the subtle to everything. It's beyond everything. And it's beyond death as well. Okay. And then now we will go to the next section of this. There are two parts to the Kathopanishad. So this is the second part, and the second part has 3 chapters. And I will go into that because it's all linked. I will sort of go past certain verses because I want to go to the connecting verse. So here you see I was talking about previously, all the different levels that we have to ourselves. And this talks about the individual intelligence. Now these verses have the Mahavakya for this Upanishad. These Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi, which is of the Chandogya Upanishad. In this Upanishad, the Mahavakya is Etat Vaitat. This is verily that. So these verses, which all end in these Mahavakyas will always talk about non-duality. They establish the link between the individual self, the individual jiva, and also of the self, and the connection between the two to establish this non-duality. So, like you have Tattvam Asi, it's saying Tat Tvam Asi, that and you are one. So that linkage or that statement which signifies non-duality is called a Mahavakya. So the Mahavakya here is, this is verily that. So throughout these verses, it keeps on saying, what it's trying to establish is trying to say that consciousness itself has manifested as all of this. That consciousness has manifested as the intellect. It has manifested as the mind. It has manifested as the senses. It has manifested as your body. Everything that has manifested from that consciousness only. It is not something separate, So that is what it is going through, Now, don't mistake and think that there is some transformation that happens to consciousness. So it's not like a lump of clay that you take something away from it to create something. It is not like that. The simile you can use here is, it's like when you're dreaming. Nothing is taken away from your body. Nothing is taken to create the dream materially. And there's really no cause for a dream. It just happens, right? So even though it says this is verily that, it doesn't mean that it is like a part of your consciousness. You cannot take out a part of your consciousness and create the mind or create the body or create the universe. It's not like that. There is no it's not really a cause like how we think of a cause, nor is it when it says this is verily that, it doesn't mean it is a part of it. But what it means is very similar to a dreamer and the dream, the one who is dreaming. Meaning that dream is also part of the dreamer. It has come from that dreamer. That is why it is saying here, by whatever form, taste, smell, sound, touch, sexual joy one encountered, it is that alone that they are cognized. What is there unknowable to that in this world? Meaning all of it is one. There is no separation. There is no duality. It is all one only. We may see the dreamer and the dream as two separate things, but they're not two separate things. It is all different forms of, you can think of energy, how you can take energy, and energy can take so many shapes and forms or whatever, solid, gas, liquid, whatever. But finally, it is the same. So that non-duality is being actually stressed here. It's just trying to say that it is all one with different forms. And it is that state that is beyond all the three states, the waking, the dreaming, the deep sleep. It is the witness. The self is the witness to all these three states of consciousness. It is the keeper of the karmic accounts. And then now, this is here in this commentary that I'm showing you, it goes over that same cosmology that I was talking to you, which is the causal level, the subtle level, and the gross level. It's very much like Tattva Bodh that I've sent to you, the cosmic hierarchy. Then this is the Hiranyagarbha I was talking to you about, the total intelligence, which is on the macrocosmic, the collective, is the Hiranyagarbha. Okay. And the Virat is the name of the total or the collective physical level of creation. So then it talks about, Hiranyagarbha, this Brahman and the subtle creation. There's a couple of verses on that. Again, it talks about it from two perspectives. One is from the individual perspective and one is from a universal perspective. It's talking about Hiranyagarbha. You can look at totality from two aspects. One is from the from the level of the totality, or from the Brahman, top down, okay? And one is from the bottom up, where the individual looks at the Hiranyagarbha. So it's just describing, the Hiranyagarbha, from whom prana is born. She's the enjoyer in the form of Deva. She enters and takes a seat in the heart's cavity. In the midst of all levels, she now truly is born. This is verily that. Etat Vetat. It's just saying. Now, the other thing is, when we know how it's going about talking about the individual intellect, the collective intellect. Individual intellect is your own intellect, and the collective intellect is the Hiranyagarbha. Then it talks about the individual body and the collective body. This is, if you look at it overall, for you, the understanding should be how the descent of creation happens, and how we have to take also the ascension, go back into the original, which is your own self. So how did this come about? This came about where consciousness, from consciousness came Ishvara, from Ishvara came the Maya, Prakriti, how that veil was put. And then the causal level, the subtle, the physical, on the collective level. And then individual souls were created, sort of as almost an exact copy of the macrocosm. So all these souls have the same blueprint, You have the the Atma, then the separation of the Jiva, then you have the causal, the subtle, and the gross. And all of these are nothing but a replication. You see how it is, these realms are so clearly defined in the Vedic literature. In no other literature in the world, perhaps in the Hawaiian culture, are these realms of our existence so clearly defined, so that for a person who is experiencing different realms of spiritual progression, of ascension, can understand these things very, very clearly and not be confused. So why is this being described? Because you see, when you are in the body, you experience mainly, of course, the body and the mind. But here is Nachiketa, who is lost his body. He's not alive. He's with Yama. He's not in his physical body. He is in his subtle body. And these levels of existence are like a lesson, like after you die and some guru or some teacher or guide has come to you, you've lost the body, you're in the astral realm, or you're in some other realm, and a teacher is giving you all this wisdom about the different levels of existence. This does take place. After you die, you are given certain wisdom, you are given certain teachings. You can think of it like a journal of Nachiketa, who's been given this wisdom after he's passed through the body. And all these things are available to you as a bonus for you to know while you're still living. And here, the descent of creation, the descent of how the totality was created, the individual souls were created, what is the levels of existence, and how you have to roll up back. What is the journey of ascension? Back up through all these levels of your existence, and how to transcend duality. It is, once you recognize the duality, once you can experience those levels, it is very easy to experience the Atma. So that is why when we, supposing I say experience your causal level, go into meditation and make an intention that I want to experience my causal level. You may be able to experience your causal level. Then you will feel the veil of separation. And if you make an intention, okay, I want to cross this veil of non-duality and I want to attain that non-duality. And if a certain level of purification has taken place, and if you have attained a certain level of evolution and attained that oneness of intellect, single-pointed intellect, purification, a certain, qualifications are met, when you make those intentions, it does happen. It does manifest. It does take place. And then you will feel that, you can see that thinning of the veil, as they say. And it could be sudden or it could be gradual. And then that is where you feel that, oh, and you can see everything. You can see all the levels, because then it's top down. The view top down is very different, So that is why it's describing it here. Both bottom up view is also given and top down view is also given. And then you can see all the levels. Oh, that is my mind working. I mean, it's like a witness state. Now it's saying you can witness your sleep, dream, waking, your thoughts. You can witness everything from that level of existence, from that state of being. So the main idea conveyed through these facts is to tell us that these very elements from which the mind, intellect, and gross body are created are to be seen nothing but short of the self. You will see the self itself has manifested in that individual self, as these uh, instruments. And yeah, so the fire, this is a very nice thing, like the virat, the total gross universe is described also as the fire. Okay, but here it's talking about lodged between the two pieces of wood is the fire of knowledge. It signifies omniscience. It's like the fetus well protected in a woman day by day, carefully. So here, um, the virat, why is it? It's saying the virat is also nothing but that. So the womb, like the womb of creation, as you might have heard many times, in which these two pieces of wood are supposedly rubbed and then the child is born, or which is the universe is born. Why is it that the fire is actually a symbol for from where this gross universe came? Because fire is the first form in the elements, because there are 5 elements. The most subtlest form is ether, which doesn't have form. Air doesn't have form. Fire is the first element which has form, and then comes water, which has form, and earth, which has form. But this is a very nice symbolism of the fire, You must read this section. Fire, fire also symbolizes an internal purification that happens within us for the yogi, for the spiritual people. How, of course, there is an external yajna that takes place. From that fire, everything is created. But also in the inside, every time you do sadhana, every time you have to overcome certain limitation, every time you have to progress in your meditation, that whole sadhana process is just nothing but, it is a purification. You have to go through the fire. It's not easy. And the fire is a symbol of purification, because when you cross it, you come out a little purer. So that is why it is external fire also, but also an internal fire that burns within us. And so this fire thing is very nice. Why, the fire is a symbol of so many things, of the spiritual sadhana also, but also of the manifest universe. And yeah, so then here again it goes into the Brahman level. The Brahman, what is the Brahman? From there, the Hiranyagarbha is born, and here it's talking about how creation comes about, and all these different levels where devas exist in the Hiranyagarbha and so forth. Let me see if there's something else I wanted to cover here. Yeah, here it talks about the mind which does not really die, See, because the mind goes from one birth to another birth. Mind does not actually uh, die. So he goes from death to death. Because one thing actually, Seema and I were talking today. What happens is when you die, the body dies. It's not the mind that dies. It's not that the causal level dies. So the subtle level and the causal level remain. So it is sort of like when you're dreaming, you can still see, you can still think, you still have emotions of fear, or you have fear or anger, or people laugh also in their dream. It's very much like that. So you can think of the dream as though you are in the astral realm, and when you die also, initially it may even seem like a dream. And when you, only thing is, of course, after you die, even though you can think and feel and see and experience these things, and there are many people who come to you to guide you, to be your chaperones, to teach you, and all these kind of things. But also, um, the fear of death is obviously not there because you're already dead. So the fear is greatly reduced. While you're alive, obviously there's a lot more fear because ultimately the fear is of death. But emotions are there, like you can grieve, you can have shock. People who die from trauma, they almost go to ER sort of, after they die, they're taken sort of like, yeah, because the trauma is still there. So there is still feelings, there are still impressions. So the causal mind holds all your impressions. So the impressions still remain with you, even after death. So, and in fact, death can cause a lot of emotion, impressions in the mind, how you die. Because I do past life regression, but how the the death from, say, war, or if you die unexpectedly, or from some tragedy or some trauma, those leave a big impression on the causal body, a huge impression that can cause a phobia in the following life. For example, if you were drowned, or if you were killed with a sword, or something like that, they can actually affect, because it becomes a vasana, it becomes an impression, a deep impression. So in my past life regret, I know people who are afraid of water, who are afraid of closed spaces, who have, XYZ phobias or fears. When I've taken them back, I've seen, oh, it's because they died like this. Okay. So, but the mind and the causal levels of you, unless you become enlightened and you're free of them, they go from birth to birth. Let's see, what is the time? 47. I wanted to conclude today. So you can read, I mean, a lot of this actually goes more into the philosophy of the soul, of the Atma. If you want, we can discuss it, but it is so deep, and then it can get very boring. So, but I wanted to give you the gist of it. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, because the main thing here is this non-duality. It will keep on stressing this non-duality. And if you can take this into your meditation and identify the different levels of your existence and see where you're at in your evolution, because the more you get evolved, the more you purify, the more you will start to experience higher and higher levels of your existence, of your being, till you finally thin out the veil and you can experience that non-duality, or I can also experience that non-duality. Sometimes what happens is it may be transient, like you may have a flash, or it may last for a little while and then you sort of come back. If that happens, it means that there is still certain things which are bringing you back to this duality, whether it is your unresolved karma, or if it's uh, the certain doubts that may come, or certain beliefs that might bring you back. But all those things are things which you have stored in your mind, limiting beliefs, limiting thoughts, limiting impressions, which make you believe that you are separate, that you are limited, and so forth. But as those things start thinning out, as those obstacles that you've placed for yourself, those concepts, those beliefs, those impressions, those limitations in whatever form, especially fear, fear of the unknown, fear of dropping the ego, the individuality. It's a big thing, dropping your individuality, dropping your personality. And more you surrender, more you fold in, the more you give, you lay down all these aspects, the more you purify and erase. Slowly, slowly, you will feel as though the air is clearing. You become feeling the vaster and vaster, and you can go into that space more and more. But only and only when you can sustain that non-duality is when you are liberated, meaning you don't come back. Then from that aspect, you will still exist as a jiva, but you will be able to see yourself as a jiva, whereas just be constrained as a jiva. So what I'm saying is that it's a top-down view versus a bottom-up view, because when you're still constrained in this individuality, you can't see that oneness, you can't see the non-duality, because there's a glass ceiling. But when you have crossed everything and everything is opened up, you can still see everything that you are. And it becomes almost like a witness state. It is, you're functioning, you'll still have feelings and thoughts, and you'll behave like a normal person, but you will be aware that this is, you have your center here, but you have your center can be anywhere. Like if I say to you, it's very much like, imagine Atma or Purusha or the Brahman as your body. Okay? That is the non-duality. Just imagine the non-duality is your body. Okay? Your individuality is like a cell. You're operating from a cell. Okay? You think you are the cell, but you're actually the body. Now, when you achieve that non-duality and you realize, oh, I am the entire body, now your center can be anywhere. If I say, okay, think of your right shoulder, you will think of your right shoulder. It'll be part of you. Even though you are that cell, even though you can still operate as physically as that cell, because physically you still have to exist. You can't non-exist. So you can physically exist as a cell in the body, but you are one with the mind, the total mind. The cell has its own individual intelligence, its own individual functionality, but it's also now can be the total mind also and the total body also. So like that, what it was describing earlier is that you can also experience yourself as the total creation, the Virat. You can experience yourself as a total mind, which is the Hiranyagarbha. You can experience yourself as one with Ishvara, and also as Atman and Brahman. So if you use the simile of the fact that physically you can be a cell, but once you gain realization, you also know that you are the body. There's no separation as such, for transactional or operational reasons, yes. I'm going to unmute everybody. So for a transactional sense, of course, I'm unmuting you, Venkat. What is happening? For that purpose, you exist as an individual, but not really.
Yeah, unmuting.
Yeah. So maybe that will help, because when you experience the total mind, it will feel as though there's a huge body that you belong to, and you've become, you become one with that mind. Do you understand? And am I making sense? It will feel like that, where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
feel your individual mind, okay? But you can also tune into that universal mind, the total mind. Yeah. So if you want to know, for example, I'm just saying, okay, let's stay on the planet. For example, you want to know, oh, is it like, if you need to know whatever you need to know, you will be able to know it
Mm.
when you need to know it. You can't know everything, but whatever you need to know, you can know it, because
Mm.
you are one with the total mind also. But you will not misuse it also, because it's not,
Mm.
there is no other really. There's only you.
Mm. Mm.
But if you want to know, for example, you're the cell and you're saying, okay, what's happening in my intestine? You can feel, oh, I can feel this in this time, this is happening, whatever. Like that.
Mm.
Like the cell, the mind, cell mind can be one with the total mind, can also go and focus anywhere it wants, whichever part of the
Mm.
body it wants information from. It can do that. Hmm? So if you use a simile, you can understand how when non-duality is achieved, you can still exist as an individual, but you also exist as the one. And the center can be anywhere. Wherever you wish to place your awareness, you can be there. Or when you see a tree, or when you see the moon, it'll feel as though it's part of that one that you also are. Hmm?
Mm.
So I'll just leave it at that, because unless unless it becomes your existential, it's very hard to describe. I mean, I haven't felt it I've had flashes of it, but I haven't obviously sustained it.
Mm.
So that's sort of how this Upanishad is describing it in various ways to you, so that you kind of understand what the message is. So like I said, I'm not going to cover the rest of this um, Katha Upanishad. It's a beautiful Upanishad. You can go through it, but it gets
Mm.
too philosophical, and it's a good read. I don't know if we need to discuss it.
Mm.
So anything you want to share?
I was just thinking while you were talking about, realizing the different layers or realizing the different rounds of your own existence.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I think it's just experiential. I can't put it in words, but yeah, I could at one level feel the expansion, but putting words to it as if, okay, is this subtle or
Mm-hmm.
is this causal? That is something. It's just I don't know how to say it. I can feel the expansion, but beyond that, putting identification to what that is,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's kind of hard, right?
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
as you experience things, as long as you can have that
Mm.
knowing, maybe not an intellectual knowing, but you will
Oh.
have more of a even in the past death, um, it is more of knowing knowingness, rather than,
Mm.
it's not like when you experience something in meditation, you should not be intellectualizing it, but it's a
Right.
knowing. You know certain
Yeah.
things. It's a knowing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so as long as you have that knowing, the clarity of understanding is very important.
Mm.
Not knowledge is not important, but the clarity
Mm.
of understanding is very important.
Mm. Right.
So gosh, this goes on and on and on. It's a very long Upanishad. Most people don't really, in the sessions they have, they don't really go into so much of these details.
Mm.
So a lot of these things, you will see a lot of these things will be repeated over and over and over again. And unless something strikes you as a waking up point, is really no point in going on about the same thing and making it a mental exercise, trying to understand that. But it is just this, in a nutshell, if you can understand, okay, this much, as much as we covered this time, it is good enough.
Right. Very beautiful, Vinita. I love it.
So, I mean, after a while, knowledge becomes repetitive. Like, whether you read the Upanishad or you read the Gita and all, and if it becomes intellectual knowledge, after some time it becomes boring also. Okay, I've already, oh God, please don't tell me. I know that my jiva is one with Ishvara. Yes, I know that. But it's just like, okay, I've heard this 100 times before. So it will stop being the catalyst for you, the knowledge will stop being that, oh, yes, wow, like that. So you should only take in as much as you can digest and as much as it can trigger something in you. If it is going on an intellectual level, you must stop because then you're crossing a point where it will no longer do its magic on you.
Right.
So that's why I try to give my own inferences. I like to give my own experience of it or whatever, how I'm seeing it, how am I visualizing it. So I prefer doing that because it's more personal. It's not so intellectual. Okay, so we'll conclude the Kathopanishad here. Like I said, the Upanishad actually goes on much, much longer, but a lot of things you'll see in this Upanishad, if you read it, that it is a repetition. A lot of it is repetition. I think some of this was maybe perhaps added afterwards. Sometimes, the Upanishad is written in several phases over time. So I don't know if some of this was added on afterwards. It seems like a add on some parts of it. It's the same is actually by Isha Upanishad also they say, original was perhaps 8 or 9 verses and then the rest were added later. Feels like that with this one also. So we will conclude, and I want to say the verses because we didn't say the verses earlier. So we'll just chant at least the Shanti mantra, and you can do it in your mind. I'll chant it, and you can do it in your own mind. Om. 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 Asato ma satgamaya. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Let's be grateful to all the masters before us. So I'll just sing one more verse. Om Narayanam Padmabhavam Vashishtham Shaktim Chatatputra Parasharam Cha Vyasam Sambodapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya पद्मपादं च हस्तामलिकं च शिष्यं तं त्रोटकं वार्तिककार्यमन्याम् अस्मात् गुरुं सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतो वन्दे भगवन्तो पुनः पुनः। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्।